I thought the secret would end us, but her silence grew heavier. As storms gather and eyes watch us, I must choose, protect my daughter, claim her heart, or lose everything when truth finally speaks out. If you like this love story, then press like button and tell in comments where from you watching. For more emotional and romantic love stories, then press subscribe button. Thanks. Mornings always arrive before I'm ready. The alarm rings at 5:30, a thin metallic sound slicing through the quiet, and for a few seconds I forget where I am. Then Lily's soft breathing from the next room pulls me back. Responsibility wakes faster than memory ever does. I move quietly, like the apartment might shatter if I step too hard. Our place is small, 2 rooms, peeling paint near the window, a kitchen that smells permanently of toast and instant coffee, but it's ours. I iron my shirt with one hand while flipping pancakes with the other. The pan hisses like it's warning me not to slow down. Life doesn't wait. It never has. Lily pads into the kitchen in mismatched socks, her hair tangled from sleep, eyes already bright. She always looks at me like she's checking if I'm still here, if the world hasn't taken me away overnight. "Morning, Daddy," she says, stretching the word like it's a promise. "Morning, sunshine." I smile, even when my body begs for rest. She deserves a father who smiles. She sits at the table, swinging her legs, watching me like she's studying a painting she's seen 100 times but still doesn't understand. Kids see more than we think. They notice the pauses, the silences, the way grief sits quietly at the edge of every day. "Will you be home early?" she asks, carefully, like she already knows the answer might hurt. I hesitate. Just a breath too long. "I'll try," I say. She nods, accepting it without complaint, and that somehow hurts more than if she had cried. 6 years old, and already learning how to compromise with disappointment. Her backpack waits by the door. Pink zipper. A small crack on the strap I keep meaning to fix. I kneel to tie her shoes, fingers brushing against the scuffed rubber toes. I wonder when she grew so fast. I wonder how much I've missed while trying not to lose everything else. Her mother's photograph hangs crooked in the hallway. I straighten it every morning, and every morning it leans again, like it refuses to stay perfect. Maybe it's reminding me that nothing ever does. Losing her changed the definition of love for me. It stopped being something warm and hopeful and turned into something heavy, something that could break you if you weren't careful. I learned early that loving too much meant losing too much. So I learned how to carry less. After school drop-off, I stand for a moment longer than necessary, watching Lily disappear through the gate. She turns back and waves, her smile wide, fearless. I wave back, my chest tight, wondering how someone so small can be the strongest thing in my life. Then I put on my work face. Morgan Enterprises rises like a monument of glass and steel, cold and flawless. I like it that way. Buildings don't ask questions. They don't care if your heart is tired or your past still hurts. They reward precision, silence, control. I've built my career the same way, clean lines, no mess, no emotional risks. Numbers don't abandon you. Spreadsheets don't die. Deadlines don't wake you up in the middle of the night asking why you weren't enough. As a senior analyst, I'm known for being reliable. Invisible, almost. I don't linger in conversations. I don't join after-work drinks. I do my job well and leave before anyone notices how empty my desk looks compared to their framed families and inside jokes. It's safer that way. And then there's Claire Morgan. She doesn't walk into rooms. She claims them. Her heels don't click, they command. Everyone straightens when she appears, like gravity shifts slightly in her presence. CEO's daughter. Executive authority. Untouchable confidence wrapped in tailored suits and sharp eyes. I learned early to keep my distance. Our conversations are brief. Efficient. Numbers, projections, deadlines. She never wastes words, and I never offer more than required. We exist in parallel lines that never touch. At least, that's what I tell myself. But sometimes, rare moments I pretend not to notice, her eyes linger on me a second too long during meetings. Sometimes she asks questions she already knows the answer to, just to hear me explain it. Sometimes I catch her watching me when she thinks no one's looking, her expression unreadable, like she's studying a problem she can't quite solve. I tell myself it's nothing. I don't have the luxury of wondering what it might be. Love, attraction, curiosity, those things belong to another version of me. A man who didn't come home to an empty bed and a child waiting at the door. A man who hadn't promised himself he would never let chaos near his daughter again. Rain starts that evening as I'm packing up my desk. Heavy. Relentless. It drums against the windows like it's trying to break in. The office empties slowly, conversations fading, lights clicking off one by one. I should leave. I should go home. But an email lands in my inbox. Claire Morgan, please stay. We need to finalize the projections tonight. No greeting. No explanation. Just expectation. I hesitate, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Lily will already be home with the neighbor. Another apology added to the list. Another promise postponed. I stay. The floor grows quieter. The city outside blurs into streaks of white and gold, rain washing the skyline into something almost gentle. Claire's office light remains on. A single island in the dark. When I enter, she looks up from her desk, hair pulled back, sleeves rolled just enough to look human. Tiredness softens her sharp edges. For the first time, she doesn't look untouchable. Thank you for staying, she says. Not an order. Not an expectation. A thank you. It throws me off balance. We work side by side, the silence between us comfortable, heavy with unspoken things. Papers rustle. Numbers shift. Outside, thunder rolls low and distant, like a warning we choose to ignore. At some point, she sighs and leans back, rubbing her temples. You ever feel like everything you've built is balanced on one wrong step? She asks, eyes fixed on the ceiling. The question hangs there, fragile. I shouldn't answer honestly. I know that. Honesty complicates things. Yes, I say anyway. Every day. She looks at me then. Really looks. Not like a boss evaluating an employee, but like a woman recognizing another human being in the room. I envy that you seem so steady, she says quietly. I almost laugh. Steady is just another word for afraid. You don't know what it costs, I reply. She doesn't push. She never does. That's part of what makes her dangerous. The storm outside grows louder, rain tracing crooked lines down the glass like tears that don't know where to fall. Somewhere between spreadsheets and silence, something shifts. The air changes. Professional distance thins into something softer, heavier. I think of Lily. I think of promises. I think of the life I've built with careful hands. And I feel, for the first time in years, the weight of wanting something I didn't plan for. When I finally leave the office, it's late. Too late. The city smells like rain and electricity, and my reflection in the glass doors looks unfamiliar, tired, conflicted, human. At home, Lily is asleep on the couch, a blanket half fallen to the floor. I lift her gently, her head resting against my chest, warm and trusting. Her heartbeat is steady. Certain. I tuck her into bed, kiss her forehead, and whisper an apology she won't hear. In the hallway, the photograph is crooked again. I straighten it, my fingers lingering on the frame. I don't know it yet, but tonight has already tilted my world. And no matter how carefully I try to stand still, some choices have a way of finding you. The rain doesn't stop. The office emptied the way a tide pulls back, slowly, reluctantly, until only silence remained. Keycards beeped goodbye. Elevator doors sighed shut. The rain outside grew louder, streaking the glass with silver lines that blurred the city into something soft and unreal. It felt like the world had narrowed to this floor, this hour, this quiet that pressed against my ribs. I closed the final spreadsheet and leaned back, my shoulders aching from the long day. The project was done. Finished. Complete. I should have stood, packed my bag, gone home to Lily. I should have followed the rules I'd written for myself and never broken. Claire stood by the window, phone in her hand, staring out like the rain owed her answers. The city reflected faintly on the glass, breaking her into fragments, sharp cheekbones, tired eyes, the rigid posture of someone who never lets go. "Just one drink," she said, without turning around. It wasn't an order. It wasn't framed as work. Her voice was low, softened by exhaustion, like she was asking permission from herself as much as from me. I hesitated. One drink could mean nothing. One drink could mean everything. I thought of Lily asleep in her bed, the hallway photo I kept straightening, the life I'd promised to protect. "Okay," I said. We poured from a bottle someone had left behind after a celebration that didn't include us. The glasses clinked softly, the sound too loud in the emptiness. We sat at the edge of the conference table instead of across from each other, a small detail that felt larger than it should have. The first sip burned. The second warmed. The third loosened something in my chest I hadn't realized was locked. "So," she said, glancing sideways at me, "do you always work like you're running from something?" I smiled despite myself. "Do you always ask questions you already know the answer to?" She laughed, quiet, surprised, and the sound changed the room. It made the fluorescent lights feel warmer. It made the rain feel less like a warning. Conversation unfolded the way it rarely does, naturally, without agenda. We talked about the project, then drifted into stories about mistakes and near misses. She told me about her first presentation, how her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped her notes. I told her about my first year after Lily was born, how I learned to sleep standing up. At some point, she asked about Lily. Not in the polite, distant way people usually do. Not as a checkbox of decency. She asked like she wanted to know her. "What's she like?" Claire asked, cradling her glass with both hands. "Too smart," I said. "Too kind. She forgives faster than I deserve." Claire smiled, but there was a shadow there. "She sounds safe." The word hung between us. Safe. I wondered if anyone had ever called Claire that. I asked about her life beyond the office. Not her resume. Not the legacy she carried like armor. Her life. She shrugged at first, deflecting with humor, but then the rain thundered against the windows, and something in her cracked open. "There isn't much," she admitted. "Work fills the space. If I let it." I watched her then, really watched her, and saw the loneliness behind the ambition. The way she held herself together like a painting hung too tightly, afraid it might fall if loosened even a little. We weren't boss and employee anymore. Titles faded. Expectations thinned. We were just two tired souls sitting in a glass tower while the world washed itself clean outside. The rain intensified, a steady roar that trapped us in our own quiet bubble. Time slowed. Or maybe it slipped away entirely. When she stood to pour another drink, her sleeve brushed my arm. The contact was accidental. Small. It still sent something sharp and electric through me. I pulled back instinctively, the rules flaring in my mind like warning lights. She noticed. "Sorry," she said quickly. "It's fine," I replied, too fast. Distance returned, measured and careful. But something had already shifted. Once you notice the absence of a wall, you can't pretend it's still there. We talked less after that. Silence crept in, heavy but not uncomfortable. The rain tapped the glass in uneven rhythms, like a heartbeat trying to find its pace. I thought of Lily again, her laugh, her trust, and guilt settled in my stomach. I should leave, I told myself. I should stand up now. But Claire turned to me, her expression unguarded, and said, "Do you ever wish you could just stop being careful?" The question felt like a hand on my chest. "Yes," I said, because lying would have been easier but less true. All the time. She didn't move closer. She didn't reach for me. She just looked at me, eyes steady, asking without words if I was willing to step where neither of us could see the ground. The moment we crossed the line was quiet. No fireworks. No dramatic music. Just the soft clink of a glass set down, the hum of the building's night system, the rain pressing in from all sides. We stood too close. We breathed the same air. And then, without planning it, without naming it, we stopped pretending distance was enough. Her forehead rested briefly against my chest. I felt the tension leave her in a long, slow exhale. My hands hovered, unsure where they belonged, until she nodded slightly, permission given without sound. Warmth replaced fear. Understanding replaced doubt. It felt like finding shelter in a storm you didn't know was coming. There were no promises. No declarations. Just closeness that felt dangerously right. Later, much later, the rain softened, and the city lights sharpened again. Reality crept back in, cold and insistent. The office lights seemed harsher. The rules returned, louder than before. We didn't talk much as we gathered our things. Words would have broken the fragile peace we'd built. At the elevator, she met my eyes. "It was a mistake," she said, steady but not unkind. "Yes," I agreed. "A one-time thing." "Yes." "Never to be mentioned again." I nodded. The doors slid shut between us, reflecting my face back at me, older, conflicted, unmistakably changed. Morning arrived without mercy. Sunlight cut through the apartment, exposing every unwashed dish, every unspoken regret. Lily bounced into the kitchen, full of questions and cereal crumbs, unaware that my life had shifted on a fault line overnight. At work, Claire was Claire again, sharp, composed, distant. Our conversations returned to emails and meetings. If our eyes met, they slid away quickly, like we'd both agreed not to touch the memory we'd created. I told myself it was over. A sealed chapter. A lapse in judgment that would fade with time. But fate doesn't care about agreements made in elevators. The rain returned that evening, light and persistent, tapping the window like a reminder. My phone buzzed with a calendar notification, Claire's initials, a meeting request weeks from now. I stared at the screen, unease curling in my chest. Some nights change you quietly. They don't announce themselves as turning points. They wait, patient, inevitable, until the consequences arrive. And when they do, they never ask if you're ready. Claire disappeared without leaving. Not physically, she was still there, moving through the building like a shadow with purpose, but emotionally, she vanished. Meetings were rescheduled at the last minute. Her assistant became the voice I heard instead of hers. Emails arrived stripped of warmth, reduced to bullet points and deadlines, as if feeling had been redacted. I told myself it was professional distance. Damage control. The sensible response to a mistake neither of us could afford to repeat. Still, the absence gnawed at me. Every morning, rain or shine, I walked past her office and felt the space where her presence used to settle. The glass walls reflected my own face back at me, tight-jawed, careful, pretending not to look. Weeks passed like this. Controlled. Cold. A punishment without accusation. At home, Lily sensed it. She always did. "You're quiet," she said one night, coloring at the table while I stared into a cup of untouched tea. Outside, the wind rattled the window panes, a restless sound that matched the ache under my ribs. "I'm just tired," I told her. She nodded, accepting the lie the way children accept rain, unfair, unavoidable. Then, one evening, when the sky hung low and bruised and the office hummed with end-of-day fatigue, an email arrived. "Please stay after work. Claire." No subject line. No explanation. My heart didn't race. It sank. I stayed seated long after the floor emptied, listening to the building breathe. The fluorescent lights flickered like they were unsure whether to keep pretending it was daytime. I thought of leaving anyway, of protecting the fragile peace I'd rebuilt, but my feet carried me down the hallway before my mind caught up. Her office door was closed. That alone felt wrong. When I knocked, her voice answered softly. "Come in." Claire stood near the window, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. The city beyond the glass blurred into streaks of gold as rain began again, sudden and heavy, like the sky had been waiting for this moment. She didn't sit. Neither did I. "I didn't plan this," she said, before I could speak. Her voice trembled on the last word, and the sound of it cut deeper than any accusation could have. This wasn't the woman who commanded boardrooms. This wasn't my boss. This was someone standing at the edge of something vast and frightening. I took a step closer, then stopped. Distance mattered now. Distance had to matter. "Plan what?" I asked, though some instinct inside me already knew. She reached into her drawer and pulled out an envelope. Plain. White. Medical. She held it like it might burn her. "I didn't know how to tell you," she said. Or if I should. The rain struck the windows harder, drumming like a warning. My heartbeat filled the room. "I'm pregnant." The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They landed heavy, absolute, rearranging the air between us. For a moment, I couldn't hear anything else, not the rain, not the hum of the lights, not even my own breath. I thought of Lily. Her laugh. Her trust. Her small hand in mine as we crossed the street. I thought of responsibility, of choices that ripple outward, of the way one moment can fracture a lifetime into before and after. I gripped the back of the chair to steady myself. The room tilted, then slowly righted itself. Claire watched me closely, eyes searching my face for judgment, for anger, for escape. She found none of it. Only shock. And fear. And something that looked dangerously like hope she didn't want to have. "I'm not asking for anything," she said quickly, the words tumbling out. "I don't expect, this isn't a trap. I can handle this alone." Alone. The word struck something raw in me. I remembered another room, years ago. A different woman. A hospital bed. A promise I made too late because I was afraid of failing. I remembered walking away once, telling myself it was for the best, that distance would hurt less than staying and breaking everything. It nearly destroyed me. "I won't do that again," I said, before I realized I was speaking. Claire blinked. "Do what?" Pretend this doesn't matter, I replied. Pretend people can handle things like this alone. She looked down, her reflection fractured in the glass behind her. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked small. This changes everything, she whispered. Yes, I said. It does. Silence stretched between us, thick and uncertain. The rain softened, turning into a steady, patient rhythm. I noticed a painting on her wall I'd never paid attention to before, abstract, dark blues and greys swirling into something almost like a horizon. Chaos trying to become calm. I'm scared, she admitted. So was I. But fear didn't get to make the decisions anymore. What do you want? I asked gently. She shook her head. I don't know. I've spent my life knowing exactly what comes next. This, she pressed a hand to her stomach, the gesture unconscious, protective. This wasn't in the plan. Plans were overrated. Life had taught me that. I thought of Lily again, how she'd learned to bend without breaking. How she trusted me to choose her every time. I need time, Claire said. To think. To figure out what this means. I understand, I said. And I did. Understanding didn't make it easier, but it made it honest. She walked past me then, close enough that I could feel the heat of her body, the tension humming beneath her skin. She paused at the door, hand on the handle. I won't disappear, she said quietly. I just need space. I nodded. Space I could respect. Running, I could not. When she left, the office felt emptier than it ever had. I stood alone with the rain and the painting and the echo of words that had already rewritten my future. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table long after Lily had gone to bed, a letter spread out in front of me. Not addressed. Not finished. Just a few lines written and crossed out again and again. I didn't know how to explain this to my daughter, or when. I only knew that someday soon, I would have to. Outside, the storm returned, louder this time. Wind howled down the street, bending trees and rattling signs. I watched it from the window, feeling the familiar pull of fear, and the unfamiliar weight of hope. At work, Claire returned slowly. Meetings resumed. Emails softened, just slightly. We didn't talk about the truth we now shared, but it lived between us, undeniable. Every glance carried it. Every pause acknowledged it. One afternoon, as she handed me a file, our fingers brushed. Neither of us pulled away. That night, Lily asked me if families could change. Yes, I said, choosing honesty over comfort. But that doesn't mean they break. She smiled, satisfied, and went back to her drawing, a house with uneven windows, a sun too big for the page, and stick figures holding hands. I stared at it long after she'd gone to bed. Some truths don't arrive gently. They don't ask permission. They simply demand to be faced. And as the rain began again, quiet but relentless, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Walking away was no longer an option. Guilt doesn't arrive loudly. It settles in quietly, like dust you don't notice until the light hits it just right. For days after Claire told me the truth, I carried it everywhere, into meetings, onto playground benches, into Lily's room when I tucked her in at night. It pressed against my chest when she laughed. It tightened my throat when she fell asleep holding my hand, trusting me with a future I wasn't sure how to explain anymore. How do you tell a child that the world she knows is about to expand in ways even you don't understand? How do you balance two lives without breaking both? I practiced the words in my head while washing dishes. While waiting at crosswalks. While staring at the crooked photograph in the hallway that refused to stay straight, no matter how many times I fixed it. The frame had started to feel like a warning, some things don't align just because you want them to. Lily noticed my hesitation before I found my courage. Did I do something wrong? She asked one evening, sitting cross-legged on the carpet, crayons spread around her like fallen petals. No, I said too quickly, kneeling in front of her. Never. She studied my face with that unnerving seriousness kids sometimes wear, like they're older than their years for a moment. Then why do you look like that? Because I'm afraid, I thought. Because I don't know how to protect you from something that might actually be good. I took a breath. Let it out slowly. The way the therapist once taught me, back when grief still had a name instead of just a shape. Lily, I said, choosing each word carefully, things might change a little. Not bad change. Just different. She waited. Patient. Brave. I might not always be alone anymore, I continued. The room felt too quiet. Outside, wind brushed the trees, leaves whispering against the windows like they were listening too. She tilted her head. Thought about it. Then she smiled, small, hopeful, unafraid. Does that mean I get a little brother or sister? She asked softly. The question cracked something open in me. I laughed before I could stop myself, the sound thick with relief and tears I hadn't planned to show. I pulled her into my arms, holding her tighter than necessary, like if I let go the moment might disappear. Maybe, I said into her hair. If that happens, would you be okay with it? She nodded against my chest. I'd teach them how to tie their shoes. And how to be brave. I closed my eyes. In that moment, Lily wasn't just accepting change, she was welcoming it. And somehow, she was teaching me how to do the same. Claire didn't see that conversation. She didn't hear Lily's words or feel the weight lift from my chest. But she saw something else. She saw us on a quiet Sunday afternoon when I finally invited her over. It wasn't a date. I made that clear to myself. It was practical. Honest. Necessary. Claire needed to understand the world she might be stepping into. Lily deserved to meet the woman whose name had started to echo in my silences. The apartment looked smaller than usual with Claire in it, her presence changing the gravity of the space. She stood near the doorway at first, uncertain, hands folded like she was afraid to touch anything. This is home, I said, gesturing around us. She smiled politely, eyes moving from the worn couch to the framed drawings on the wall. Lily's art. Houses with crooked roofs. Suns too big for the page. Stick figures always holding hands. It's warm, Claire said quietly. Not the temperature. The feeling. Lily peeked out from her room, curiosity winning over shyness. I knelt beside her. This is Claire, I said. The person I told you about. Lily stepped forward, studying Claire the way she studies everything, with open curiosity, not judgment. Hi, Lily said. Hi, Claire replied, lowering herself to Lily's level. Her voice softened in a way I'd never heard at work. Your dad talks about you all the time. Lily beamed. He makes the best pancakes. I laughed. Claire did too. The tension eased, just a little. The afternoon unfolded without a script. Lily showed Claire her drawings. Claire listened like each explanation mattered. When Lily asked her to sit on the floor, Claire didn't hesitate. When Lily offered her a crayon, Claire took it. I watched from the kitchen doorway, heart caught somewhere between fear and awe. This was the man Claire was seeing now. Not the analyst who met deadlines. Not the employee who followed rules. But the father who knelt to tie shoes. The man who listened to bedtime stories twice because Lily liked different voices. Claire saw the way Lily leaned into me when she laughed. The way I brushed hair from her eyes without thinking. The way my world bent around a 6-year-old girl with mismatched socks. And something in Claire shifted. She didn't say it then. She didn't need to. I saw it in her eyes when Lily hugged her goodbye. I felt it in the quiet that followed after Lily went to her room. Claire stood by the window, staring out at the late afternoon sky, the light soft and amber, like the world was holding its breath. "You're different here," she said. "I'm the same," I replied. "This is just the part most people don't see." She turned to face me. "That's the part that scares me." I didn't ask why. I already knew. Falling in love with a man was one thing. Falling in love with a father meant falling in love with a life that demanded sacrifice. "I don't know how to fit into this," Claire admitted. "I've built my life on control. On certainty. And this," she gestured around the room. "This is beautiful chaos." I stepped closer, careful not to crowd her. "No one's asking you to decide everything right now." Her eyes met mine. Vulnerable. Honest. Terrified. "I think I already am," she said. That night, after she left, I sat on Lily's bed and watched her sleep. Her chest rose and fell steadily, untroubled by the questions that kept me awake. I wondered how many choices a parent makes without ever being sure they're right. My phone buzzed. A message from Claire. I didn't plan on falling in love. Especially not like this. I stared at the screen for a long time. Love. The word carried weight now. It wasn't reckless or romantic in the way it used to be. It was heavy with responsibility. With consequences. I typed back slowly. "Neither did I. But I won't choose fear over honesty." The reply came almost immediately. "That's what scares me most." The days that followed felt suspended, like the pause before a storm. Claire grew quieter at work. More distant. We spoke when necessary, but the unspoken pressed harder than ever. One evening, I found a drawing Lily had taped to the fridge. 3 stick figures. One taller. 2 smaller. All holding hands beneath a sun that nearly tore the paper with its brightness. I thought of Claire. Of her fear. Of the choice looming in front of us both. Love had always been dangerous. I'd just forgotten how much courage it demanded. Outside, clouds gathered, dark and slow-moving. The air felt charged, waiting. And as the first drops of rain hit the window, I understood something with startling clarity. Pregnancy had changed our circumstances. But love, real love, was the real risk. And neither of us knew yet whether we were brave enough to take it. The truth didn't explode the way I imagined. It leaked. A whisper here. A glance that lingered too long. A sudden silence when I entered a room. At Morgan Enterprises, secrets never stayed buried, they floated upward through polished floors and glass walls until everyone pretended they'd always known. The board found out before we were ready. No announcement. No confrontation. Just a calendar invite that appeared on Claire's schedule and then on mine. Same time. Same room. Different chairs. The boardroom felt colder than usual that morning. The long table gleamed like a blade. Rain tapped the windows in short, sharp bursts, as if the sky itself was impatient for answers. I took my seat without looking around, hands folded, heart steady in a way that surprised me. Claire arrived last. She didn't look at me at first. She stood tall, composed, armor back in place. If anyone could have mistaken her for untouched by rumor, it would have been her. But I knew the truth. I saw the tightness in her jaw, the way she inhaled before speaking, like each breath had to be measured. Questions came dressed as concerns. Words like optics, liability, conflict floated across the table like polite knives. No one said pregnancy. No one said love. They didn't have to. When the meeting ended, the verdict was clear even without being spoken aloud. Boundaries had been crossed. Solutions were required. Distance was the cleanest one. Claire didn't wait for me in the hallway. She went straight to her office and closed the door. An hour later, she called me in. The room smelled faintly of coffee and rain. The painting on her wall, the one of swirling blues and greys, seemed darker today, like the horizon had vanished entirely. "They want to transfer you," she said, standing with her back to me. "Different division. Different floor. Same title. Same pay. Protection disguised as opportunity." I didn't answer immediately. I watched her reflection in the glass, how her shoulders lifted, then fell. How tired she looked when she thought no one was watching. "It's the safest option," she continued. "For you. For Lily. For the company. For you," I added gently. She turned then, eyes sharp with something like pain. "I won't let my choices cost you your future." I crossed the room before fear could catch up with me. I took her hand, right there, in the middle of everything we were supposed to be careful about. "I won't hide," I said. "Not from you. Not from this." Her fingers tightened around mine, a reflex she didn't try to stop. "Ethan," she whispered, like my name was a warning. "I've spent my life choosing safety," I said. "Walking away when things got hard. I won't do it again." She searched my face for hesitation. Found none. Outside, thunder rolled low and distant, the sound echoing through the glass like the world acknowledging our choice. The transfer was declined. The fallout arrived quietly at first. Side conversations stopped when we walked by. Emails grew formal. Invitations disappeared. Judgment has a way of dressing itself up as professionalism. We didn't fight it separately. We walked into meetings together. Sat across from raised eyebrows and tight smiles. Claire spoke with her usual authority, I backed her with facts and calm. We didn't explain. We didn't apologize. Slowly, the storm lost its teeth. One afternoon, I found a letter slipped into my desk drawer. No name. Just a single line written in careful handwriting. "Be careful who you trust." I folded it once, then again, and slipped it into my pocket. That night, I showed it to Claire. She read it without flinching, then placed it face down on the table. "Fear always writes anonymous notes," she said. At home, Lily sensed the tension the way animals sense weather. She asked fewer questions. Hugged me longer. Drew pictures with thicker lines, pressing the crayons harder against the page. One evening, Claire came over after work. Not to talk about strategy or rumors, just to sit on the floor and help Lily finish a puzzle missing 3 pieces. I watched them from the kitchen, the quiet intimacy of the scene catching me off guard. Claire laughed when Lily corrected her. Lily leaned against her without thinking. The distance Claire once guarded dissolved in those small, unplanned moments. Later, when Lily was asleep, Claire stood by the window again. Rain slid down the glass in soft trails, turning streetlights into golden smears. "I don't know how to need someone," she admitted. "I've always been the one people leaned on." I stepped beside her, close enough that our shoulders touched. "You don't have to know how. You just have to let it happen." She rested her head briefly against my arm, just a second. Just enough. The next board meeting was harder. Sharper. This time, the questions were direct. The judgment open. I answered when asked. Claire didn't flinch. When a comment crossed the line, I spoke up before she could. Afterward, in the empty hallway, she looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I want to," I replied. Something shifted then. Trust, fragile and real, replaced fear. That night, Claire sent me a photo. Lily's drawing from the fridge, 3 stick figures, hand in hand, under a sun too bright to contain. She gave this to me, the message read. She said it's for when things feel scary. I stared at the image, chest tight. For the first time, Claire allowed herself to lean, not just physically, but emotionally. She stopped pretending she could do this alone. She stopped building walls where bridges were needed. And in that quiet surrender, I felt the weight of what we were becoming. Outside, the rain finally stopped. The city breathed. The storm passed, but the pressure remained, waiting for the next test. Because love doesn't remove the risk. It only gives you a reason to face it. And as I turned off the light, one thought stayed with me, heavy and undeniable. The hardest part wasn't surviving the judgment. It was realizing how much we stood to lose. And choosing each other anyway. The night the baby was born, the world seemed to hold its breath. Outside, the rain that had haunted us for weeks finally gave way to silence. The city lights softened behind misted windows, blurring into gentle halos, like the edges of a dream just out of reach. Inside the hospital room, everything was sharp and real. Sterile white walls, the steady beep of machines, the faint rustle of nurses' footsteps. But beneath it all was something quieter, something deeper, something that tethered me to this moment with an intensity one couldn't explain. Lily sat beside Claire's bed, small hand clasped tightly around hers. Her wide eyes, so full of wonder and something like resolve, never left her mother's face. I watched them, feeling the weight of history pressing on us all. The past, the losses, the mistakes, they had brought us here, to this fragile new beginning. Claire looked tired but radiant, the soft glow of new life lighting her face. She glanced at me, and in that look, I saw all the unspoken words, the fear, the hope tangled together like a knot we were learning to unravel. I reached out and took her hand gently. My fingers traced the lines of her palm, the same palm that had trembled when she told me the news, the same palm that now rested with trust in mine. It was a silent promise, fragile but unbreakable. "Are you ready?" I whispered, the question meant for both of us. She nodded, eyes glistening. "Ready as I'll ever be." Time slipped then, stretched and folded like fabric as the hours passed. The world outside continued, unaware of how much had changed inside this small room. I found myself thinking of Lily, the brave 6-year-old who had welcomed this chaos with open arms. Her laughter, her resilience, the way she had already begun to build a family none of us had planned but all of us needed. When the first cries cut through the quiet, a shiver ran down my spine. Life entering life, so raw, so undeniable. Claire's breath hitched, and Lily squeezed her hand tighter, as if grounding her in the miracle of the moment. The baby was here. I didn't know the weight of fatherhood until then. Not just the responsibility, but the fierce, aching love that burns quietly beneath every decision, every sleepless night, every whispered lullaby. Holding my child for the first time, I felt the years of loss and fear dissolve. The past was a shadow behind me, but the future, bright and uncertain, stretched out ahead like the dawn. Later, as Lily leaned against me, sleepy and content, Claire rested her head on my shoulder. Our hands found each other, fingers entwined in a silent understanding. We were no longer just a man, a woman, and a child, we were a family. Imperfect, unplanned, and fiercely alive. Outside, the rain returned, gentle and persistent, a lullaby for new beginnings. It washed away the fear, the judgment, the doubts, leaving only the raw truth that love was what made this moment last. And for the first time in a long time, I believed we could last too.